What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caparoso. Little Saturday pre-divisional weekend kicking off 12-pack mix of picks for the games this weekend and thoughts and predictions for the New York Jets GM and head coach search, which continues to meander on, is a polite way to put it. I think is a fair thing to say at this point. I did a quick one yesterday, post Borgonzi getting hired, just because sometimes there's a bit of a frenzy amongst Jet fans, and I got to jump in and join the frenzy. Today was the originally scheduled pod I was planning to do, and then we'll have Buck the Trend hitting tomorrow from Dan, because we got to have stuff on the feed every day. Also, reminder, badlandstoj.com, get your hoodie before Paul starts shipping them. Other PSA reminder, April 11th, Printers Alley, New York City, TOJ, Badlands, live show. First one, long time. Tickets will be on sale soon, but hold the date, April 11th, 7 to 10 p.m. No excuses. Travel out. The whole gang's going to be there along with some of our friends. So looking forward to that. So quick off the top, put in my underdog picks. I shared them. But ride, use promo code Badlands. I am putting together CJ Stroud over 199.5 passing yards. I'm putting Jared Goff in there over 1.5 passing touchdowns. And I am putting Patrick Mahomes lower than 0.5 interceptions. Those three together is a nice 3-1 payout. Little promo code Badlands at Underdog Fantasy. My picks for the game, these are boring and chalk, but I don't care. The goal is to try to win and get them right. I am likely to tease down the Chiefs and the Lions today, probably each to -2.5, put them together. I think the home teams win. I think they handle business. The Chiefs just have such a hard time covering big spreads, but I think they'll ultimately find a way to win. I think the Commanders could be feisty, but I think the Lions are just going to score too many points, and they'll kind of run away with it late. Maybe I leave that one teased up a little higher to like 4.5 or 5.5, but I think both the Chiefs and Lions are going to advance. You want to have a little fun, bet the over in the late game because there should be a lot of points in that one. Tomorrow, I kind of think Philly is just going to handle business. I think they're going to run the ball up and down the field on them. And it might not be pretty, but I could see them winning like 23-10. I may just take them with the -6.5. I think that Rams in the cold, they probably a little further this year than anyone expected. And I think Philly will just bully them up front. And again, I don't think like Hurts is going to light it up or anything, but it feels like a 23-10 type win. And then betting with my heart and my head, Ravens money line. I think the Ravens are better than the Bills. I'll, of course, be rooting for the Ravens. I know it's tough because the game's in Buffalo, but I think Lamar, I think Derrick Henry, I think they get it done. I know all Jet fans will be tailing and rooting for that one as well. For the Jets and where they sit right now, I think, and I'm recording this Saturday afternoon, I think they will make a hire by, let's call it like Tuesday or Wednesday, sort of feel like the right timing for this whole thing to be done. So middle of the week, probably right around when Connor and I are going to be recording anyway. I think the second round interviews are going to be JES, maybe Newmark, Dimitrov, Gain, Hallaby, Greenberg. They're not going to second interview 6 people, but these are among the names that I think will be seriously considered for the role. I don't know if they end up going the Grigson route for a second interview. I don't think that will happen, but I think Eric Sullivan, I think Newmark, I think Gain, names we haven't talked about a ton, but I feel like they're going to be in the mix for second interviews with no Borgonzi. Dimitrov for the experienced GM, Greenberg and Hallaby, I would like to see them get in second interviews as names we've discussed a lot. I'm also intrigued by Spielman. I think of those 6 or 7, you'll see 4 or so maybe get a second interview. And again, by the middle of next week, do they make a call? I still think Aaron Glenn is a front runner to be the head coach. I think Josh McCown and Brian Flores are very much in the mix. If I had to make a bet today, I would still bet on Glenn being the head coach, but I think McCown is a real dark horse for the job, and I'd keep an eye on that. Front office, man, I really feel like it's a dart throw at this point. I'd be lying to you if I had a strong lean in one direction. I think Gain is a name to watch if they go with Glenn in particular. I think Eric Sullivan is probably more in the mix than we've talked about to date. But I wouldn't write off Dimitrov. I do wonder if they circle back to the experienced GM if they're going with a first-time head coach. And he ends up getting a really serious look because he was one of the first guys that they interviewed. So those are sort of the names overall that I'm keeping top of mind as we, move into what should be a different phase of this search. So it's been wild, and I get Jet fans' frustration at this point. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I think that there was nothing wrong inherently with the Jets using a 33rd team. I think it was smart to bring some other voices in the room. I respect Tannenbaum. I respect Spielman. These guys are running a business, right? They're running a privately funded company. They're going to do what's best for their company first and foremost. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's America. But for the Jets, at what point are they just doing interviews to build up the Rolodex, learn as much as they can about all these guys, do certain people favors? Is that the first priority at a certain point versus what's best for the Jets? And that might not be the case. The Jets might really need to talk to all these people, and they might be having a really hard time making a decision. And the 33rd team is we're just going to keep throwing people at you until you get a lean. Ultimately, Woody's making this call with Chris and Jaime. It's not going to be Tannenbaum and Spielman who make the final call. So I don't want to assume bad intentions. I do think Tannenbaum probably inherently is a guy who would like to see the Jets have some success. And I think the 33rd team wants this to go well, because if it goes well for them, what a thing to put on the top of your resume. We fixed the New York Jets. We ended the playoff drought. Hire us to do the same thing for you when you need a GM or a head coach. So I don't assume any maliciousness, but I do think you get to a certain number, you start to become a meme, and the Jets just need to not become a meme on anything anymore. There's been enough of that recently. So, yeah, you just reach where you're talking to certain people and you're like, we're talking to Joe Witt and Darren Rizzi, but, we can't find time to, or we can't find a way to get Liam Cohn to come in and talk. Some of these other little ones where you're like, maybe they're not interested, but can you just get it out there that you're talking to these people? There is a PR and fan element to this too, but I don't want to judge it until I see who they hire, right? This could be a very long process for them to just end up with Glenn and Dimitrov or Glenn and Greenberg, names we've been talking about for a really long time. And whatever, it was a long, windy road, but eventually you get there. Now, if we get to the spot where it's they're hiring Grigson and Arthur Smith, you'll have a different kind of reaction here. And you're going to have to give Jet fans the benefit of the doubt for being skeptical there, although we'll always approach anything with an open mind. To put a bow, I really like Aaron Glenn as a candidate. I know certain people want nothing to do with the defensive side of the ball. I don't believe in that theory. I think if you could be a head coach, you could be a head coach. It has nothing to do with where you've been a coordinator. I like where he spent time. I like what we've seen behind the scenes from him with Detroit. I like what Dan Campbell has to say about him. And look, they did the same stuff about Saleh. I get it, but that doesn't mean he's Robert Saleh. And it's unfair to just say they're the same person just because they coach the same side of the ball. So I like Glenn a lot as a candidate. You will not hear me complain if they hire him. I feel the same about Josh McCown. And some people are like, oh, it's crazy. You give him he's never been a coordinator. Well, okay. Why is it a prerequisite you have to be a coordinator first to be a good head coach? If you're going to be a head coach, and I think everyone thinks Josh McCown will be a head coach sooner rather than later, move a year early, not a year late. Guy's been involved with 13 different organizations in the NFL. He is beloved everywhere he went, was a tremendous mentor to every young player in the building. Guy is a leader, period. You cannot find a person who will say a bad thing about this guy, and people respect the hell out of him. So I think he has a chance to work. And yes, it's a risk, but anyone's a risk. Aaron Glenn's a risk. Brian Flores is a risk. Todd Bowles was a risk. Robert Saleh was a risk. Eric Mangini was a risk. There's no hire that's not a risk. They're not hiring Kyle Shanahan or Mike Tomlin. That's not happening. So anyone you hire is a risk. So McCown, you could take worse risks than him. Flores, I'm not writing off. I don't know how much of it is Flores is saying he has to be with Grigson. We don't know if that's actually true. If he's forcing a package deal, that's a bit of a red flag because I don't think he has the ability to do that at this stage of his career. There's also a little bit too much of a PR push for him that makes me a little wary. But I like the attitude and energy he brings, but I get the skepticism of his inability to keep a coaching staff together. All three of these guys have questions, but they are my top three preferences at head coach. I'd be lying to you at this point if I said I have a hard power rankings on GM. I think I would be pretty excited if they tried a Hallaby or Greenberg, Hallaby in particular, just because, man, I like really smart people and giving them the opportunity to figure it out. And those are really smart dudes, particularly Hallaby. I like Spielman a lot. Schrager got me fired up about him when we talked. And, from what I've been reading and researching post-Sen, I think that'd be an interesting swing. I just don't know if it's likely to happen. Would have no problem with Dimitrov. I think he has an excellent resume. I'm open-minded about guys like Gain and Eric Sullivan and Newmark, who bluntly I did not know a ton about before this process. But their resumes are reasonable on paper to where they'd be getting an opportunity. So I'm open-minded about a lot of these, and it'd be naive for me to just write any of them off or say any of them are going to be a slam dunk. So that's where everything sits. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Remember, back on the feed tomorrow. We're like 15 away from 4,000 patrons, which is like crazy. So thank you, everyone, for following. And we'll talk to you soon.